Yeah, so the environment is really, really busy and exciting. If you haven't been to a regionals yet, they're very large events. There are a lot of people there, all moving around. The environment is very, very fast paced. Coming from Magic, I was kind of used to the tournament grind and not being able to eat for 10 hours a day and all of that. But very, very fast paced with all of the side events and everything else happening during the day, throughout the day, trying to go to one event and then immediately finishing that up and then going to another event. That was really exciting. It was great to see so much top shelf presence, so many of the locals there. Quinn, Nolan, Dan, of course, out there. A lot of the regulars here were able to make it out to Vancouver as well, which was great to see because everyone likes a nice post-match event session debrief. Hey, bad beats, here's what happened, or here's how I won. It's just nice being able to chat with your buddies between rounds. So I love seeing everybody out there. So I think it was really productive me going to so many events with my deck because I ran into a lot of decks that I didn't expect to see at an RC. And this is something that's been a bit of a learning curve for me coming from Magic, where there's a very large incentive to play an off meta deck because of the best ofs. So you actually run into a lot more non-meta kind of rogue decks at an RC than you might expect at a local 5K. So you go to a 5K and it's always going to be your tier 1, tier 0 decks because the only incentive is to win. You go to an RC and there's the additional incentive of, oh, I'm going to play Rumble and get a $15,000 card by not winning a single match. I might as well just show up and get Rumble. So definitely a good idea to play a lot coming up to it because you got exposure at your local events and your high-end events to off meta, which end up being a lot of your losses in that event. So the Toronto area has such a strong, dense player base, and we have so many incredible players around here that going to a regional, you're so ahead of the curve already. You come from a grindy, very competitive environment. Even at a local Nexus night, you're running into a lot of really strong opponents that your first couple of matches at an RC might even feel easier than you thought because you're so used to playing a higher caliber of player. And then again, you might run into something that's a little weaker, a little less optimal because that player could be going for a best of. So when you're in that 2-0, XO, 3-0 bracket, you still running into a lot of decks where you feel very well positioned going into that deck because you're there with something a little stronger. So a big aspect of a really long tournament like these are going to be your mental game, not carrying the negative of a bad beat where you're carrying that frustration and that anger and then it makes you play suboptimally in your next round. So I really like these types of events when you have people that you know, people that you can meet up with between rounds and venting out those bad beat stories, but also trying to still learn what you can. I know my first loss, it was pretty rough because I had a winning line. I went for what I could do to win that game. And out of all the cards I had drawn, I didn't find a single version of the card that would have won me a game. So these things happen, but being able to mentally reset and then win your next game so you can still get into the best position going into day two. I've seen people, I chatted with people even at Hartford recently, they go in 6-0, they lose their next round, and then it sets them onto a tilt, and now they're going in and losing the game after that as well because they're not playing as well as they should. My top deck moment actually happened to my opponent. The moment that sticks out for me in terms of I love this deck was actually I was on the receiving end. It was a classic go in with the Scuttle Crab, perfect information to know your opponent's hand. You have so many lines, you pick the line now with perfect information, and your opponent draws two cards, and they are the exact cards they will need to then beat your line. So it was funny to see it happen to me, because I've definitely been there on that end as well, where you're playing against Aurora and you top deck the Star-Crossed right after they hit a Mind Splitter on you, and you're just so happy about it. So it happens on both ends. It actually happened to my opponent in that scenario where that's the one that really sticks out to me, and I wish I had been on the other end of that where I get the card that wins off the top. But definitely a good moment overall, as frustrating as it could be. So what is going to change is hopefully the deck. I'm really hoping for some new options going into set 4. I really like Aurelia. She is very strong in terms of the way that the deck plays. It's a very linear strategy and it's very consistent, but it's also one of the decks that can just brick. And those bricks feel really rough when there's not much you can do to get out of a situation. You run into the wrong half of your deck, you get all the buffs and no units, or you get all the units and no buffs. So I'm hoping for something that allows for a little more um, diversity in terms of the game plan. I really like those strategies where you can pivot and change what lines you're going for. And I'm excited to see what set 4 brings in that, because as much as I like Aurelia, I'm happy to switch off it here soon.
What will you keep the same?
Definitely the grind. I really do enjoy going and playing Riftbound. I play almost 5 nights a week, every single week. So the grind is definitely going to stay on. In terms of my locals, I'm probably going to continue to bring meta decks, which I know can be a little frustrating when you want to go to a Nexus night, but I think learning how to play against the rogue decks is so critical to have long-term success in this game that it's important that you come with the deck that you plan to bring, and those reps matter so much more than other games. Big goal-oriented person, objective-oriented person. My first goal was to get day 2. I accomplished that, so I'm happy to have a winning record on myself. And my next goal is going to be a top 64 at the next RC. I'm looking to kind of get into that regionals invite, make sure that I'm going to be able to consistently attend and perform in these events, and just hopefully show up stronger every time I go to an event.